So, for people who are listening to this, when you come on this damn show, y'all better be prepared because these brothers here ain't playing with these damn questions. One guy said one day, he said, "Man, I'm gonna sign you up for a open mic night." I said, "Go ahead and do it. I ain't scared. Don't. Let's do this." Oh man, these people, I'm gonna crush this. Man, I got like 4 or 5 laughs. I was like, "Oh, this is not going well, right?" Being older, looking back, I don't want to be able to tell my grandkids, "Hey, that guy right there, I got that guy started."
Hey, welcome to another exciting episode of the Dre and Smiley Inner Circle podcast. We have yet another amazing guest on the show today.
Yes, he is definitely amazing. We have Mike Cutts. Mike Cutts went from doing comedy shows to producing comedy shows with untapped talent in Tampa and St. Pete, Florida. He started out with the open mic, going the open mic circuit and with his coworkers. And then he just went to doing comedy. And he used to have people in his office laughing. And I've met Mike a couple years ago, and I didn't realize he was a funny man, and now I'm laughing. I was like, dude. And we started talking. And started telling me what he's doing, and I said, "Man, you want to get on a podcast?" He's like, "Of course." So, Mike, welcome to the podcast, and tell us, how do you go from making them laugh at work to producing comedy?
So it's funny, I worked in an office setting. I've been doing sales for like years, man. So we'll be in the office, just they let us cut up because like the sales team to be loose. So they just let us cut up in there, and it's like anything I see happening, I just go in on them. You know what I'm saying? And then most of them, are really square people. So, but the young people would get the jokes and stuff, and they'll be on the floor laughing. "Did you hear what he said?" Under their desk, and like, "What's wrong?" So one guy said one day, he said, "Man, I'm gonna sign you up for a open mic night." I said, "Go ahead and do it. I ain't scared. Don't. Let's do this."
Yeah.
And then he did it, and I was scared as hell. Okay.
So he double triple dared you, and you just did it. And how was that? Was you terrified? Did you stutter? How did you the lights? Was it like a drug that got you
No,
fueled
man,
up?
that's a good question. I mean, he pulled my card, right? So I wouldn't let him do it in the office because everybody's listening. So I said, "Okay, let's go." So he ended up signing me up for open mic night. The whole office came, right? So there's a difference between being funny and telling jokes, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's a totally different ball game. I can be spontaneously funny, right? But when I have to write down actual jokes, create a storyline, a middle, an ending, and a punchline, bro, I was like terrified, right?
Yeah.
You don't know if it's gonna work or not, right? So I was just practicing, man, trying to practice.
Well,
That's all.
well, before I turn it over to Andre, I saw you on YouTube, and I'm over 40, and when you went through that very personal rendition of a prostate exam, it brought back memories, and I'm like, oh my. So and he said, "What you call him, long finger?" So yeah, exactly. So, but man, thank you. So you mentioned the beginning, the middle, the end, and the punchline. What was the biggest challenge? Is it the writing, or is it just the spontaneity or the lack of spontaneity?
So it's actually the writing, right? I mean, because I'm already, growing up in the hood, we used to talk about, your moms, your dads, the whole Jonan session. So I was always good at that, being quick. But to actually write a joke that people can get and make them laugh, you don't know if it's going to work, right? So you don't know how they're going to receive the joke.
So growing up, my dad was hilarious. Came from a relatively large family, but
Mhm.
he wasn't like, he didn't tell jokes. He was very serious. But the things he did were hilarious. As a result, my sister's, she's a riot. She's funnier than me, but I'll never tell her that. One of my brothers actually was a comic for a while. He's a writer now, and so I think I have I have some one liners that'll make you laugh a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm a comedian, but I think I got that from my dad, just because the stuff he did, we all would crack up about. Where's it come from for you when you think back? Growing up in the city, all of us went through Ribbon, Jonah, whatever you called it from the area you were in. We went through that, but everyone wasn't good at it. Everyone, you know, um, couldn't just put out those zingers. Where does it come from for you? That ability to tell jokes.
That's a good question. So I think it came from being like a little shy kid growing up, in the hood, and everybody used to pick on me. You know what I mean? Because being the smaller kid all the time, and then so I would learn to. It was like a defense mechanism, right? So when they would pick on me, I would find something on them to go right at, and it would just automatically shut them down, and everybody would start laughing. I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this, right? So it got around it. Nobody would even mess with me. They wouldn't even talk about me no more. They'll say something, but don't say nothing back. So I wouldn't be able to say.
Yeah,
So that's where it really comes from. I kind of like, it's sort of like protecting myself, if you will, from being
sure,
like, picked on. So
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that resonates with me because I was telling my son recently, and I feel like he got the gene early. When he was probably 5 or 6, came home, and my daughter, who was at the time maybe 3, was like, "Daddy, where's my such and such? I forgot to pick something up for her." She asked me for something, I forgot to get it, and she asked me where it was, and my son just jumped in and told her something to calm her down, and then I'm kind of looking like kind of curious, and then he looked at me and says, "Dude, I just saved your life." I'm like, "What?" And then he starts laughing. So I share that to say that you know I think it's genetic, right? I think it's genetic, and part of it is your exposure, your surroundings. Do you have family members that are as funny as you?
So no, actually I don't. But like your dad, like my uncles were seriously funny, right? So they would say something they meant it to their heart, but we'll be dying laughing because the way they delivered it. It could be something like, "Didn't I tell you to rake up them damn leaves?" But how he did it was so funny, and you going. So, but no, they're not naturally funny people. They're actually pretty serious people, man. They don't laugh too much at all.
Yeah, that's my dad. That's my dad. He's super serious, but the stuff he would say or do, all of us just would fall out.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me this: when you think about growing up, you were influenced, I imagine, by different comics. Tell me about some of the comics that influenced you and your style.
Yeah, so that's a good question too. I mean, we all grew up on Richard, you know what I mean? Robin Williams, people like that. I like the quick, witty comedy always got me, right? And I didn't really like talking about people because, growing up, I could talk about people, so that was easy. I like D.L. Hughley's one of my favorites. He's very clever, and his delivery is excellent. So I used to study him a lot. And then, I grew up in St. Louis, so Sid the Entertainer's,
Said,
I've been knowing Sid when he was nobody, right? So they all used to do like a little comedy. It's like, y'all remember Ponderosa? They used to close it down in St. Louis at night, and it would be a comedy show. So Sid and them used to come through there like D.L. Hughley when they were nobodies, right? When people, just like I started out, trying to get on. That's how you try to get out and get on. So we used to see them raw, man. It was so funny. And I was like, this stuff is great, and I never thought about, trying to do it one day. I just knew it was in me though, but I never tried it. So.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the business side of comedy? Is it similar to being an actor, or because I was fascinated when you and I spoke and you said, well, I open acts, I do promotions, I got comics all around the country, and that's the part that no one sees. It's like, what is it? I think someone said, Denzel said, I was a 20-year overnight success. And you touched upon it when DL Hughley and Cedric the entertainer were not big. They were grinding it out, getting on the open mics and doing different things at the Ponderosa, just to get on that national spotlight. So if you can, what's the journey? If I said, okay, Dre's like, Smiley, you're funny, dude. Go get with Mike so you can be at the Open Comedy Central. What is that like? Is that like, tell that journey?
So what I found out, and I started late, right? It was like, again, I was in my 40s, man. So I wasn't trying to be a comedian superstar. I had a 9 to 5. So it was just something. And I love laughter costs nothing, right? Laughter is free. And this world is hurting, people in pain. So I just love to make people laugh. If I can make them laugh for 2 hours and get rid of their problems and whatever they're going through, to me, that makes me feel good, man. So I wasn't looking to be no star or anything like that. So I would go and try to get at the Improv, all these, big places. And here's the thing, they won't let you in. No matter how funny you are, if you're not bringing them 200 or 300 people, they're not going to put you on that main stage. So then I found out, damn, this is political. This is like a business. No matter how funny you are, right? You could be the funniest dude and not going to put, they got the main guy who open up for the big acts that come to town. They use almost the same guys. There's 1 or 2 guys they use. And then, the DLs and them go on stage and do their thing. So you can't, it's kind of hard for you to break down a barrier. I mean, it's easy for the kids now, but I'm talking 12, 13 years ago, right? You know YouTube, so you had to try to get in there and prove to the manager guy, like, hey, I'm funny, let me in. He was like, no. So I linked up with one of my buddies. I said, man, I'm tired of this, man. Let's do this ourselves. And he said, I know a couple of clubs, Mike. So we went to the club guys and we said, hey, man, we want to put on some comedy shows. I know your traffic's kind of slow. We'll bring some audience to you. I said, can you give me the front door and you take the bar? And he said, that works for me. You can sell out my bar. You can get, the tickets from the front door. So that's what we started doing. We started putting out flyers, and I worked the open mic circuit, right? So as a comedian, to practice your jokes, we all go to the same places. So we collect phone numbers from each other, right? So I started getting all these different guys and we exchanged numbers. And I said, hey, man, I'm doing my own thing now. And they was like, oh, you all right, Mike? Call me. So they used to start out doing them for free for me. Then they started charging me they started charging me for $100 a set. I was like, oh Lord, you used to be free. You ain't Kevin Hart. So yeah, that's how it started, man.
And say, for example, you mentioned opening for, say, the main guys. So have you opened for anyone like a Chris Tucker, or who is from a comedian perspective? Because you mentioned Richard, Eddie Murphy back in the day, but who is that person that was like, I can't believe I'm coming on the mic before this big time D.L. Hughley, or who is that comedian that you was like, man, if I get open for them, that'll just make your year, your life?
Well, unfortunately, I never got a chance to. I mean, I came close to, but Eddie Griffin, I came across a couple of times, but never got a chance to open for him. But we were like in the same setting a couple of times, like, damn, if I had the shot, But again, it's getting past the manager, man. He wouldn't. He uses his own same people. So it was tough for me, but I wanted to do that bad. Just one shot of just, opening for somebody. Cause I got some, years of stuff I know works. Okay.
Well, Eddie was cool in the sense that I think it was 2003. I was working in Amsterdam and Eddie Griffin was there at an outdoor cafe restaurant. And I actually saw him, and they got brothers over there, but he could tell I was from the U.S. And I wasn't stalking him. I just went up, introduced myself, and he was just real normal, real cool. And I had a certain level of respect for him then, because some other Hollywood types, they just like, man, get away from me. Who are you? He was just sitting there minding his business. I guess he had his people around, but Eddie was cool. He had a soft spot in my heart because he was so approachable. And he wasn't condescending. So, man, yeah, he's a good dude. But
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I met him in West Palm Beach, and the same thing. He was sitting down having lunch, and I went over to him. He's from Kansas City. I said, I'm from St. Louis. We chopped it up a little bit. And he said, well, I'm opening up at the Improv down here in West Palm. And I was like, I do a little comedy, man. I'll try to pitch. I'll shot my shot, but, ain't nothing he can do about it. You know what I'm saying? Right. So they were paying him, but that was the closest I ever got, man.
Yeah, the story you shared about how you and your buddy went out and figured out, let's do this ourselves, right? They won't let us in, let's do it ourselves. It reminds me of the story Earthquake shared a number of times on different platforms with starting the comedy, what was it called? Uptown Comedy Club in Atlanta. So back in the day, they were trying to do the same thing you were doing. They wanted to get into these clubs that were they were predominantly white. They didn't see the value, in the black comics. They didn't see the value they brought. And so what they decided to do, Earthquake and his business partner, they opened up a club called Uptown Comedy Club. Michael, dude, that place was off the chain. I mean, we saw everyone come through there. You name it. Anyone who's still around today, they came through there. DL, obviously Earthquake, Dave Chappelle. I didn't realize it was happening at the time. I didn't know the story until years and years later when he told it. It was great seeing how successful he was coming out on his own. So with that in mind, tell me this, Michael. What's the game plan? What's the final product you're trying to put out there?
So and that's another good question. So there's a couple of guys that's doing their thing now. Well, here's the thing. I had a lot of things set up before COVID, right? So before COVID, I was going to make a good run. I had it all written down. I had my game plan set up. I was going to do like 3 shows. My original plan was I was going to take my local acts, teams that I had here, and just try to do the state of Florida, right? Hit all the circuits in Florida that we could, and put them out there. Because again, it's not about me, man. Like I'm trying to bring these guys out. But since COVID hit, guys went out and started doing their own things, and they're doing well. Like Rio Paris is a buddy of mine who been with me for a long time. He's in New York right now. He's doing well. He's they love him up there. He's killing them. So he started out with me, man. Like 9-10 years ago. Another guy named Cam Bertrand. He was on Last Comic Standing. He started out with me. These guys I used to pay, do it for free. Then they started charging me. But so look, I would like to, and I'm still working on it, but everybody's kind of disconnected now since COVID, right? So I'm trying to put it together where I want to do the state of Florida tour, right? So I have to get out there and start, networking again. And I haven't been networking for a while. So, but that's the end game for me. If I can do like just a tour of unknown acts that are so funny, man, these guys will have you dying and you never even heard of them before, right? So if I can somehow put them out there, that would be like the end game for me,
That would be great. That would be great. I know with a lot of businesses, once COVID came, they had to pivot, right? And so like you had a game plan to tour Florida and put everyone on the map. And so now you have to adjust that just a bit. Tell me this. This might be unrealistic, but remember during COVID how they had the verses going on with different artists? Could you see something like that potentially happening in comedy where you have a virtual show that people would, attend, pay tickets for, and then attend virtually? Is that something that can happen in comedy?
It probably could work. I don't know how you would, set it up, but it probably could work. It'll be tough because you got to hope, at 8 o'clock on a Saturday that everybody want to go home and, listen to you or sit down and watch, what you guys got to say, But that's not a bad idea. That's definitely something to think about. I mean, Versus was a great idea. When they did that, I was like, damn, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Swiss Beats, I think it was, right?
Yeah.
I was wondering, let's say when you meet a comedian, say in the Florida area, Ocala, he comes down like, Mike, I'm funny. And like you said, you went from that being witty funny versus writing the comedy out in a script. Do you conduct training with your people, or they come at you as they're like, man, Mike, let's say our mutual friends, like, this dude is hilarious, Mike. And you're like, yeah, you're funny, but this is what you got to do to be on stage. Do you find that that's an easy transition for the funny people, or is it something that you just like, no, beginning, middle, end, punchline? Or how does that transition work for the naturally funny people who are, let's say, not trained on the stage?
For me, like when they bring me people, I usually know who my go-to people are, right? I use them because I host it. I have an opening act, middle guy, and the closer, right? So typically, I know who the middle and the closer guys are. I know they're going to kill, right? So if you're the new guy to the team, and I don't know how good you are, I'm just going off of their word, right? But I'll usually try to get a feel for you. I'll sit and talk to you for a little bit, and if you can make me, just general conversation, if you can make me chuckle, because comedians, they can't help themselves, right? They're naturally funny people. You're gonna see if they got something in. I was like, oh, this guy kind of, I see it, I see it. So I'll let them open up. But what I do with my audience is I let them know, we don't boo anybody, right? We're showcasing new people for you. You can come here, eat, drink. We got the DJ playing good music. It's a good vibe. Don't mess with them. They won't mess with you, right? And give this man a shot right here because somebody gave me a shot, man. I just jumped on stage. I didn't think people were going to laugh. So I try to give people a shot. Now, if they're not funny, the crowd will tell him that, right? So I don't have to tell him that, right? He'll know when he get on stage and three people chuckle.
Right.
He'll know. It happened to me. Every comedian failed, trust me. It happened to me, bro. It's humbling.
And I was listening to another one of your YouTube clicks, and I didn't realize you mentioned at the end of one of your videos that the guy was flashing you at the back. So I didn't realize they had those little cues like, all right, this is your light. And I think we all can remember, it made me think of, remember Dre and Mike back in the Apollo days? And that dude come out with the hook and pull you off the stage. and Mike said, I see the light. He flashing at me, so I got to go. So I was just like, man, that was really cool. So tell us about, you have a store. If you want, you can plug your facility here in Tampa, wherever that is. If someone wanted to come and catch your new talent or catch you in Tampa, St. Pete, where is that? And talk about the female version. Do you have lady comics? Do you have African American comics, white comics? What's your diversity like, or what's the people that's on your crew?
That's another good question. So I like diversity, man. Like, because I played all white clubs and I played all black clubs. Now, let me tell you something. Those jokes don't intertwine, okay? So, trust me. I tried. They do not work. So you got to be universally funny, right? So I got females, white, black, all types, man. All we don't turn down nobody, man. If you're funny, you have the courage to get on stage and do this, I'll give you a shot. Now, whether or not you can sustain it and stay on that's a whole nother story. But I got in my phone, I probably got 50 local comedians and entertainers, because at one point we should do bands too. We should do bands and, comedians. But my buddy, who I started out with, he branched off and left me. He's doing his own thing now. And they're promote clubs and parties. So they're doing the party scene. I just stuck with the comedy scene. That's the party with my thing. So I still do comedy. He's doing the party side of it. But we're in Ybor City. I'm at Martin Marcel. It's a Cuban club in Ybor City. Is what we're trying to promote right now. So I'm trying to get that spot going right on 7th Street. So
nice. Yeah, I think it's and tell me if you would agree with this. I feel like comedy can be a fickle friend. What I mean by that is that, and you alluded to this earlier in terms of jokes working in one room and not another. Ricky Smiley was talking about when he first started out. Steve Harvey gave him a shot and coached him a bit. And at the time, Ricky Smiley was killing it. He was going throughout the South, was crushing it. HBCUs, black clubs. He was everywhere. He was crushing it. And the people that were booking him were pretty much from the same cloth. It was young guys, from the hip hop heads, etc. And so a promoter was like, "Oh, dude, you're on fire. I'm gonna send you here. I'm gonna send you there. I'm send you there." And then all of a sudden, they wanted him to open up for a concert, right? And I feel like I forget what the audience was, but it was the polar opposite of what he had been playing to. So either it was like he was playing to like the hip hop crowd, and now this crowd was like Luther Vandross, which is a different crowd. And he went
Mhm.
out there and he was like, like 3 seconds in, they were just booing him and not listening to him. He said he got off stage, the promoter wouldn't look at him, the other artists wouldn't look at him. So it's one of those things where it could be kind of a fickle friend. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
very fair. Because
Yeah.
they bring when you bring bands like that, right? They bring different people, different crowds. And I didn't know that. I had to learn that too, because I'm thinking everybody laughs at everything, and it's not necessarily true.
Right.
Because again, it's just different type of people, a different vibe. So I'm like, oh man, these people, I'm gonna crush this. Then I got like 4 or 5 laughs. I was like, oh, this is not going well, right? So
we
I
like,
just
wait a
wrapped
second,
up real
is
quick.
my mic not working?
right, right here. Is this on? Hello? Yeah. So I totally got it. So we kind of branched away from that. So we just made it strictly comedy and a DJ. If you come into a comedy show, don't expect no musicians to start serenading you. Okay.
Right. Yeah, it also reminds me of and this story came out years and years later too, but what's the guy, black comic from Chicago? He passed away. He was part of the Kings of Comedy.
Oh, Bernie Mac.
Bernie Mac. It reminds me of when he in this story, I don't think any of us, Bernie Mac, yeah. I don't think any of us heard the story until, decades later, but we all remember when he was on Def Comedy Jam and he just crushed it with the I ain't scared of you. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So did you guys hear the backstory to that?
Yeah.
So apparently, whoever came on before him, I forget who it was, they failed. I mean, they just booed him off stage, right? And Bernie Mac heard the boos. He was like, "What's going on out there?" Right? So he's kind of pacing back and forth. He was like, "All right, I just got to step my game up." So he walks out there. And the performance we all saw is a result of that. He walked out there, and the DJ, Kid Capri, and him, they didn't talk ahead of time, but the connection they had because of I think of what Bernie Mac demanded, like his presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
He came out there, told a joke, and then goes, "Kick it!" And then Kid Capri throws on the music, right? Then he did this. It was like they rehearsed it, but it wasn't rehearsed. It was so. And that was like one of the best sets he ever did. For anyone listening, if you haven't seen this set, Google Bernie Mac. What was the name of the show?
That was Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah. Bernie Mac, Def Comedy Jam. One of the best sets ever. He crushes it. So yeah, I just want to kind of touch on how fickle the friend can be, the friend that we call comedy. So tell me this, Michael. Paint a vivid picture of what you do as it relates to the business side of it. You've touched on it here and there, you and Smiley, in terms of like having comics and you have a show that you do at a spot in Tampa. Can you paint a vivid picture for those that might be interested in maybe working with you or doing what you do exactly?
Yeah. So people, it's the business side is much difficult than being funny on stage, right? So I'm responsible for the venue, setting up the venue, making sure, if we're doing foods, because I like to have something for the people to eat and drink, make sure the bar's ready, make sure we have enough servers, make sure the DJ's there, make sure that all acts, I have to have backup acts because these guys will call you last minute and say, hey, Mike, I'm out. I can't make it. My car broke down. So I have to have like 3 people on backup, right? So I always tell a comedian, bring somebody with you just in case, because these people are paying their money. I want to make sure they get the show and my name's on it, right? So I want to make sure they're laughing and having a good time because I'll create this family atmosphere. But it's tough because I'm responsible. So I get there 2 hours early, right? I got to make sure everything's set up the way I want it arranged. I got to make sure the lighting's right. The sound check, like you guys know, I got to go through the sound check, make sure they're good. The DJs playing the kind of music I want, an old school vibe, the bad boy stuff back in the day. We don't play much of this young, new stuff because I like to appeal to, I'm 55, man. So I appeal to people in my age bracket. That's who comes to my show. It's some younger people, but so And then the ticket sales, I got to make sure, I'm marketing, getting enough ticket sales out there, and because if you don't fill a venue, they ain't gonna want you to come back. So it's tough. So some nights are better than others. Again, COVID kind of hurt us. I just did a show in July. I think we got around 70 people, which was pretty good. And then so I'm planning one soon. I'm working on it now, but it's easy to find me, man. I'm all over the place. I'm on all the social sites, so I'm easy to find. But if you're interested, just look me up, man. I would love to put you on. I like putting on new guys who are funny and want to showcase their talents. I'll let you bomb. Come on.
All right.
I'll let you bomb. So I'm looking at it. So it's 2020. 2023, and I do all the futuristic questions. So now it's 2033, you're 65, and you're like, I'm so excited. I toured Florida. We crushed it in Orlando, Jacksonville, and you know what? I picked up Alabama just because the momentum was so great. What does 2033 look like from a comedian, a comic perspective, the business side, and man, I'm so happy because my guys opened up on SNL and they were touring at the NFL at the Super Bowl. They opened up for the halftime show. What's on that horizon for you from a comedian comic perspective?
Man, you guys asked really good questions, man. I should have been studying. You're gonna take me on.
The Dre and Smiley interesting question podcast.
This is really good. Like, so
you thought telling jokes was hard.
You're right. I got to answer these damn questions. That ain't easy. I thought it was gonna be simple. How old are you? This. How tall are you? That. So, being older, looking back, I don't want to be able to tell my grandkids, hey, that guy right there, I got that guy started. That guy right there, he used to come through my spot when nobody knew him, right? That guy right there, just to know that I helped these people get to a platform that they were trying to get to is where I would like to see myself, down the road. Hopefully getting a tour set up like I would want to down the road. It's going to take a lot of planning and, marketing and strategy, but definitely being proud of what I accomplished for us, putting out, some of this talent that you're going to see, because you're going to see some of this guy. I know my guy is going to make a Netflix special, and I told him he better shout me out because it's going to be hell to pay the captain if he don't. Okay.
So are you like let's say this guy, we'll say is Smiley, and he's funny, and you're like, he did some shows, and are you the bridge to Hollywood with I would imagine, is it similar to the actors where you got to get an agent and then you get all that business manager when you get to the Dave Chappelle level or the Chris Rock level, or is it just them? Is it similar to entertainment, or are you that guy to take them to the next level?
So like,
are you a feeder shop? You feed it to
dream. So if you're sitting at home and you're thinking, I can do this, I'm funny. People say I'm funny, right? Those are the people that I'm looking for, right? And we're gonna really find out if you are or not. And then we're gonna give you that exposure, right? Nothing helps you more than exposure. Yeah. You bring your camera people with you. You bring your phones, and people are gonna YouTube you. They're gonna throw it on there, and then people are gonna get the chance to see you who never even heard of you, right? So it's all about exposure, man, and put it in different genres, age range, brackets. So we appeal to everybody, right? So white class, middle class, poor class, I try to put everybody out there so you can get the exposure, right? Now these guys are getting all this major exposure because we gave them a platform. We basically gave them a platform of a full house of us, right? And they made us laugh, right? So now they're not afraid of anything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me this. So for those that say today the comic scene is saturated, in terms of like there's, I don't know, maybe too many comics. What would you say to that? It's too hard to get on because of that. What would you say to that?
No, I disagree with that because the known comics have their people already. You're gonna go see DL. You're going to go see a Kevin Hart, right? He's not bringing anybody new to his show. But for a new guy who can bring a new audience, I think that creates another level of, comedy and bringing another group, another following, if you will, right, to comedy. And I think it's wide open, but just don't be afraid to jump in that pool, man, and give it a shot. Don't let them talk you down from it. You can do it. Like it's not easy, but I would say it's not saturated either because it's only Dre, it's only so many jokes I can tell, right? It's only so many jokes I can come up with, right? Well, why not have a new, fresh guy who got a new spin? His life is a little different. The way he was brought up is a little different, right? Well, his exposure is different, right? So he's going to tell a different story than me being in my mid 50s, right? So, I love it, man. I said no. I disagree with that.
Okay.
I like that, and I was thinking maybe when you talked about the audience, how as soon as you said that you could come out and maybe like Ricky Smiley, he thought he had a hip hop crowd and it was Luther crowd. Do you have to have a large inventory? Because when you walk out to the stage, you look out and maybe you're expecting all these 25 hip hoppers and you got 45 cruise people or 60-year and older cruise audience. So do you code switch on stage or do you look around like, oh man, or did you look around like, oh yes, or how does that work from a comic perspective? Because I would think you would have to be fluid and versatile because what you intended to say, you had to course correct because the audience wasn't who you anticipated.
That is an excellent question. I got a story for you. Thank you for that question. Wow. So I had a set that I was doing, and I went to scout the set earlier. So I went the week before because I was coming on the following week. So the week before, it was all Spanish. I was like, who? So I started writing down Spanish. I'm going to kill it. Oh, they're going to love this. The Puerto Ricans, they get this all the time. So I come out, all white audience. I have no backup in my repertoire, right? I ain't got, so I'm letting these, boom, I hear crickets. Dude, all you hear is a, so I'm going, well, thank y'all for letting me, I appreciate it. Thank you. So I fly off stage and I run to the promoter right away and I said, listen, man, give me another shot. Bring me back next week. I'm funny. Bring me back next week. He said, all right, Mike, I'll give you one more shot. You can come back next week. So I started writing universal. I stopped writing specifically for the audience. I just came up with stuff that's just universally funny that everybody can relate to, right? Whether you black, white, young, or old, you had this problem or you've been through this or you've done that. So I started writing that way and it was more comfortable for me. And then I can appeal to any crowd that's out there, right? So that's what I said. I got stuff that I already know is going to work because I know it works, right? I tried it 27,000 times, right? Right. But that was a tough lesson, Smiley. Tough lesson.
I bet. As you share that story, I think about other comics that I've seen that seem to have the universal appeal. I hate to mention Dave Chappelle because obviously he's like the goat, the best and best of them all. But there's a joke he tells in one of his Netflix specials, and you mentioned you mentioned that storytelling is what it is, right? It's not one-liners. And in my mind, a good comic doesn't do the black people do this, white people do this, and then wait for the laugh. A good comic, tells a good story, has a good punchline, but there's a joke that Dave Chappelle tells where he starts off, he says, I'm so bored at home. I have a fishbowl where I just put words in. I write them on pieces of paper and put them in the fishbowl. And when I'm bored, I'll grab a word out and I'll try to write a joke around it. That's how he starts off the joke. And then he starts telling the story, right? And as he's telling the story, he's sucking you in and sucking you in and sucking you in. And then he hits you with the joke at the end. And for me, it's like mind-blowing, right? Because I think a good comic is a great storyteller. And you never see the joke coming until it just like smacks you upside the head. That's what gets you to fall out of your seat. So Yeah, you mentioned that at the top, and that resonates with me. So tell me this, Michael. What's one thing that people don't know about you?
I don't think people don't know how funny I really am, right? Because Smiley doesn't even know. And he's been knowing me how long now?
I,
See,
it's almost
see?
3 years. It was like 4 years ago. And it was only like a month ago I found out you were a funny man. I was like, what?
Is that because you're reserved? Why is it that most people don't know? Is it because you're pretty reserved for the most part? Why is that? Why don't they know?
Well, so I think that most comedians think they have to be funny, right? Yeah, I'm a comedian. I'm gonna be the life of the party. I'm gonna be the funny guy. So I kind of like step back from that, right? And kind of let, the room play itself out, if you will. And I don't, I can go set up a show and get on stage anytime I want to, so I don't have to be the focal point. But I think people don't know how funny I really am unless you spend time around me, like for hours. Then it's gonna naturally come out, right? But in a social setting, I really don't, But my families and friends, I'll let them
Well, I'm
have it.
telling
I
you
hit them
this,
with
man.
all the time.
Next time you have the show, because he's less than a mile away from my house. I know exactly where it is. I'll be in the audience, man. The next show. I didn't even know what was going on over there, so I'm excited. I will walk down there with we gonna go check you out next time you have an event. Let me know. I'm gonna get the first ticket. So awesome. Go ahead, Dre.
Oh, thank you, man. I will.
So real quick, you mentioned that around your friends and family, you hit them up all the time. Do they ever get bold enough and try and challenge you? Is there anyone that can hang with you, or are they kind of like, oh, don't say nothing, otherwise, what's it like?
No, you do. You get the one guy, right, who always hear that you're a comedian, and he the Jones, or he like the tell the Jones of the crew, and he always comes at me, right? Here we go again, right? So
That's
he's all,
funny.
your jacket's too small. Why you got on that small jacket? So we always go, back and forth. So it's
Yeah.
you always get that guy. But I usually let them.
Okay.
I usually let them win. Like I'll give them a one, two of my good ones, and then I'll let them, finish
Right.
off because
Right.
I like to save my stuff for the stage, if you will.
There you go. There you go.
It's like I'm not
There you
gonna
go.
entertain y'all
That's
for free. Y'all better come and buy a ticket.
No,
right. You gotta pay
no,
for these. You gotta pay for these jokes.
no, no.
I work too hard to develop these.
Thank
I can't
you.
hand them out for free.
Can't just
Gotta
give
have
these
you
away.
using them all up and down Martin Luther King Boulevard
you know
without giving me credit.
the funny thing about that is you just led me to something else. When I was working an open mic circuit, is you got to be careful with your main jokes because it's loaded with comedians, right? We all practicing our stuff, and you would see guys with paper. Soon as you say,
Oh,
so what we learn to do is not tell our best stuff because they'll grab it and take it to a show and they'll go do it, right? So yeah, man, you got to be really concerned. That's why when I'm out in the public, you won't really know I'm that funny because I ain't gonna give you no stuff you can take back.
have you up on stage with my jokes.
they steal your act. You be like, man, this fool took my act.
Right?
Right.
well,
Right.
He took my best joke I had.
well, Mike, we
That's
get ready to
funny.
move into the final four, and so this is where I'm gonna ask you a question. Dre will ask you a question, and I'll ask again. But the final four is: think of it. You're having dinner. There's a table of four. You're in one chair, and there's three other seats. Alive or dead, who would you want to have at your dinner table and why? Three other representatives at your dinner table, alive or dead, and why?
So Magic Johnson, I want to hear some of those stories about I heard back in the day at the mansion. All
Oh,
right.
that's a good one.
Mm.
Uh, LeBron James, I like how he, brought his crew from nobodies and they can walk into anybody's business room right now without him. I need to know how they done that, right? And D.L. Hughley, I just want to sit down and chop it up with him one day and get some perspective, man, on how he became so funny because I think the guy's hilarious.
Yeah, he is. He's one of the guys I used to see back in the day at the Uptown Comedy Club. I mean, just genius with his jokes. Tell me something. You know, well, actually, I'll do one more comment. The group that LeBron brought up, that is so unusual, right? You hear all these stories about athletes who have their crew, and the main goal of that crew is to siphon off as much money from that athlete as possible. LeBron's crew has done the polar opposite. To your point, they've been able to branch out in their respective areas and build their own identities. And like you just said, walk into any room as an individual. That's pretty amazing. Glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Tell me this. Here's my question for you. What's been your greatest success, personally or professionally?
That's a good question. I think thinking about being a promoter of comedy and actually doing it, right? Because I had the thought of, I'm going to bring out acts. You know, saying it to yourself in your bed is like, it sounds good until you actually have to go out and market, get the acts, find a bar, find a location, put out flyers and the whole thing. So I'm proud that I was able to do that. I know how to do that because it's not easy. You have to know what you're doing to get all that to work together, right? And then get the date and schedule the date and the whole thing. So I'm proud of that I went from writing on my notepad, which Smiley saw me at my first open mic that I sent him with my notepads on a chair. So I don't know if you noticed me looking at my notes, to being able to set up a whole show on my own, right? So that's one of my greatest successes.
How much does social media, what part does social media play in that, the marketing and advertising? Do you use that at all?
I do, but here's the thing, right? You're going to get a few new people to your show, but the people really going to come to your show is the people who've been to your show and had a good time, and they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to tell their family and their friends, right? And by me not having a signature artist, if you will, so you're really taking a gamble on me because you really don't know these guys like that, right? But you know that Mike put on a good show. He makes you feel warm and welcome, and you're going to have good fun. The food's going to be good. You're going to have a good time, and you're going to laugh, right? So, and I'll bring out some new people for you to maybe in the future who can be somebody.
No, that's nice. So
Nice.
just taking that a little step forward, what would you say is your greatest superpower?
Man, that's a good question, but I know the answer. I am a likable guy. People generally like me just by being in my presence. People I have, and my wife has noticed it too. I have people that just come around me and they like, I love your energy, I love your vibe. Like you bring off your aura is just positive, and you always in a good mood. You're a good guy. So that to me, that's if you're around me, you spend time with me. If you don't like me, that's a you problem, right? So most people do. Babies and dogs. Most people.
I can,
When they come up to you, do they go, Michael, you was smart, you was kind, and everybody loves you? Is that what they say when they come up to you? You was smart, you was kind.
well, I can attest to that, man. I mean, like I said, I've been knowing Mike for 3 years, and it was only in the past 2 months that I found out, or 6 weeks, 4 weeks, that I found out that he was a comedian. But he has this energy that you just want to gravitate towards him, and it's always positive. And I bumped into Mike on several occasions at different. I saw you in Ybor, I think a few times. Just every time he has this light that just draws you in, and he's always smiling and happy. And I just thought he was just like a happy dude, but I didn't know he's a funny man. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, final question. So you've had a pretty exciting life. You've made the pivot from having a corporate job to doing what you really enjoy. If you were to write a book, an autobiography, what would the title be?
So for people who are listening to this, when you come on this damn show, y'all better be prepared because these brothers here ain't playing with these damn questions. Right? They asking you serious questions. I got to think about some shit. I was just come on here. This is some bull. I just want y'all to know that. All right. Now, damn it, Dre, repeat that question again.
Okay, you live a pretty exciting life, right? You made the pivot from corporate America to following your passion, doing what you really enjoy, which is comedy. So, if you were to write an autobiography, what would the title be?
It probably would be from a fool who went to school.
From a fool who went to school.
I like it. I like it.
You start off
That
being
works.
funny, and I had to educate myself in the funny business, man.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. Michael, man, this has been the realest, most comic-filled, enjoyable interview we've had. It's been a pleasure learning about your transition from corporate America into comedy, learning what happens behind the scenes as it relates to the business side of things. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on, man.
Yeah, and I would echo Dre. Thank you, Mike, and we appreciate you taking your time out and sharing your journey and your perspective with our audience. And like I said, man, I can't wait for your next show. We're going to be there. I'm going to be there. And thanks again for sharing your experiences with our listeners.
Oh man, thank you guys so much for having me on again. I thought it was boring, and until Smiley hit me with it, and I had a great time. The questions I'm still upset about, but I'm gonna get over it. I hope I answered them pretty well. But thank you guys so much for having me on. And matter of fact, I love the show. I like listening to the show myself, so I love the show.